its language, its literature, and its Catholic faith. That century and a quarter of culturally based national resistance to political subjugation, during which the Catholic Church was the safe deposit box of Polish identity, left a profound impression on Wojtyła's soul, and was decisive in shaping the thoughts and actions of John Paul II. From that experience, he discerned that the real driver of history over time is neither politics nor economics, but rather culture. At the heart of any culture, as at the beginning of the word culture, is cult, what a people cherish and worship. Thus, far from being a non-factor in modernity, religious conviction and the truths Christianity teaches about the inalienable dignity of every human life can be a dynamic, creative force, bending history in a more human direction. When Wojtyła was elected Pope on October 16, 1978, much of the Catholic Church in the West found itself in a defensive crouch. The man who became John Paul II could summon the Church to a new evangelical and public dynamism because his soul had been formed by a different experience, an experience of the Church as the bearer of the most potent vision of human possibility on offer. Karl Wojtyła also had a Carmelite soul. His youthful attempts to enter monastic life as a Carmelite had been rebuffed, but his spiritual life, and indeed his entire view of the human condition, was profoundly shaped by his encounter as a young man with the spiritual writings of the classic Carmelite reformers of the 16th century, St. John of the Cross and St. Teresa of Avila. From those Carmelite mystics, he learned that the central truth of human history is found at the cross of Christ. Human beings come to fulfillment, or, if you will, beatitude, not through the assertion of self, but through the gift of self in obedience to God's will. In his mature philosophical work at the Catholic University of Lublin, Wojtyła would refine this conviction intellectually and would put the law of the gift, or the law of self-giving, at the very foundation of his ethics. As each of our lives is a gift to us, so must we make our lives into gifts for others. That refinement was only possible, however, because of the original perception. Rather than being a hideous cruelty or an absurdity, the self-sacrificing death of Jesus Christ, which was then vindicated by his resurrection into a new and superabundant form of life, is the axial point of human history. Here, in the death and resurrection of Christ, the deepest truths about human destiny were and are revealed. Here, in the embrace of obedience to God's will, human beings are truly liberated. Here, in the demonstration that death does not have the final word in either our individual stories or in the story of humanity, is the source of a courage that can overcome fear and match, even conquer, worldly power. The Carmelite dimension of John Paul's richly textured soul was amplified by what might be called the Marian dimension of his interior life. That deep part of his personality formed by his self-understanding as a spiritual son of the Virgin Mary, under whose protection he placed his life and his pontificate. Polish devotion to the Virgin Mary, embodied in the Black Madonna of Czestochowa, is well known. This Marian dimension of Wojtyła's soul was not, however, simply the absorption of a traditional, emotionally vibrant form of Polish piety. For during the Second World War, under the influence of the lay mystic Jan Tyranowski and the theological writings of Saint-Louis Grignon de Montfort, young Karl Wojtyła began to understand that all true